अनंत भाई।
हाँ नमस्कार विनोती।
हाँ नमस्कार। आपण काहाको पचारथले हाउ आर यू मते ना काहाको पचारथले आई एम फाइन.
Yes, and also our dear brother Ranveer Bhai and Madan Bhai. Nice to see. Sandhya Appa, how are you?
Hello to everyone.
And Ranveer, I have sent you a PPT. And last time when you transferred hostship, there was a problem. So you can show it from your side.
Okay,
Or you can make me the co-host, so that if
yes,
I'm
yes.
not able to transfer hostship, there is no problem on your part.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. No problem. I can, make you the co-host also. Okay. So, where is Carlos, sir?
I think he's on the way or with us.
Okay, okay.
Hello, Mira. Namaskar. Welcome.
Good evening, Ananta.
Yes.
Hello, hello. Good evening. Good evening.
So good to see you.
Yes, lovely, lovely to see you.
Namaste, sir.
So he's Ranveer. He's Ranveer, our co-nurturer.
Ah, yes. Nice to meet you, Ranveer. Good.
Thank you so much, sir. Yesterday I was reading your one article on emerging new civilization initiative. I thought like I should incorporate this thing in my syllabus.
Oh, you are too kind.
Yes, sure. So, shall we start or wait?
Yeah, we'll wait just for 1 minute.
Yes.
In the meantime, Carlos, let me introduce some friends who are already present.
Oh my God, I see there are many people with us.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for being here.
And we have Professor Meera Chakrabarti. So she's a poet, a philosopher. And we have Dr. Madan Mohan Pradhan. So he's a doctor and a poet and a creative thinker. We have Sandhyarini Giri. She's a poetess, a friend, and she works with a kindergarten, what we call as Anganwadi, and many friends. We are from different walks of life. And we also have Minati. We have Minati Pradhan, who is a poetess, a thinker, and
this is fantastic.
And of course, you have met briefly Ranveer, who is also a very creative soul and kind of a soul which is enthusiastic about border crossing.
Thank you, sir.
So we were to begin with a song or a poem. And I had requested a friend to sing a song. Let me just call her.
Wow.
Okay, maybe we would begin, Ranbir,
Yes.
and then as we go on, we can include some of these elements of songs and poems. Yes.
Okay. Namaste everyone. I, Randhir Kumar Gautam, on behalf of School of Humanities and Social Sciences of Raffles University, welcome everyone. My greetings. I also welcome you on behalf of Swadhyaya Sahachkara, Circle for Creative Co-Learning, Vishwaneedam Center for Asian Blossoming, Puducherry and Chennai, and Rage Global Foundation, USA. It is my honor to welcome our distinguished speaker, Carlos Alvarez, Pereira, and all the distinguished participants to this event. I also welcome Honorable Justice Meena Vibomber, former Chief Justice of Rajasthan High Court, Honorable Vice Chancellor of Raffles University, Professor Dibakar Goli, Deepika Dave, Chief of Rage Global Foundation, and Professor Anand Kumar Giri, Professor at Madras Institute of Developing Studies and founding honorary executive trustee of Vishwaneedam Center for Asian Blossoming. Let me give a brief introduction of our speaker, Carlos Alvarez Pereira, previously a researcher in systems dynamics and entrepreneur in the digital sector. Carlos promotes the emergence of a civilizational shift towards equitable well-being within a healthy biosphere. He is a member of executive committee of famous Club of Rome, where he co-leads the initiative on emerging new civilizations and intergenerational dialogues. He keeps doing research in complexity thinking and the transformation of knowledge and innovation to respond to the existential needs of 21st century. He is also member of advisory board of UNESCO, chair of global understanding of sustainability at the University of Jena and of the International Batson Institute. Carlos is a fellow of World Academy of Art and Science and has been a lecturer and researcher in applied mathematics at the Polytechnic University of Madrid. He is also a founder and manager during more than 20 years of several consulting companies in Spain, Switzerland, France, and Germany, and founder of a non-profit research institution devoted to collaborative projects in the domain of complex system of artificial intelligence. He has been vice president of the Spanish Fulbright Alumni Association for 8 years. Thank you so much, sir, for all the blessings you bestowed and attend this dialogue. Our hearts are filled with gratitudes. Today is a very special day. Today is the first anniversary of our Swadhyaya Sahachkara. Being a part of it, I can say it is the most important investment of Vishwaneedam Center for Asian Blossoming, which is creating a base of real and creative education through intercultural dialogues. I'm sure Professor Anand Giri sir has so many plans and projects and adventures for years to come. Let me also give a brief introduction of our Swadhyaya Sahachkara, co-learning circle of self and mutual studies. Swadhyaya Sahachkara is an initiative of studying and learning together self, culture, societies, and the world. Friends associated with this are eager to walk and mediate with new horizons of thinking and new movements of social and cultural change at work in our contemporary world. We study seekers such as Sri Aurobindo, Mahatma Gandhi, Chittaranjan Das, a seeker and creative thinker from Odisha, and many others from around the world. We also present our own writings and reflect upon our creativity together. We also invite creative seekers from different fields of life to share with us their lives, vision, sadhana, and struggle for creating a world of beauty, dignity, and dialogues. We often meet Sunday for intercultural dialogues. It is our honor of our university to have collaboration with Swadhyaya Sahachkara and the Vishwaneedam Center for Asian Blossoming, Puducherry. Thank you so much, Professor Anand Giri sir, for giving a great opportunity to nurture our creative thinking. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to work on such a innovative project. Now I would like to invite Professor Anand Kumar Giri sir to kindly moderate the session, which topic is the Club of Rome and the calling of planetary co-learning, the emerging new civilizations perspective. Sir, over to you. Kindly unmute yourself.
Thank you so much, dear Randy, and thank you and a warm welcome to our dear friend, dear and respected friend Carlos, and all friends and teachers co-present, our respected Justice, respected Vice Chancellor, and Deepika ji, and all friends. This evening, we take this opportunity to take our journey together forward in this creative co-learning circle, in this dance of creative co-learning. And we are very happy and rather blessed to have with us Carlos. And he is an executive member of the Club of Rome, and he is a systems thinker, but at the same time, a very animated and passionate practitioner. I think learning involves both a systematic way of thinking and learning and a passion of learning. And he draws his inspiration, the little I have read of him, from many sources, including Aurelio Peccei, the founder of the Club of Rome, his ways of learning. At this juncture, if I can request you to show the PPT, please, I have sent you. Or I can share the screen if there is no problem of hosting and co-hosting.
I have to make me co-host. Yes. Now you can share the screen.
So do you see it?
Yes, yes. It is blank, but I think, yes, yes.
It's coming. So, so Aurelio Peccei, in his book, The Human Quality, and he says that the empire, the global human empire, in fact, possesses the wherewithal to outshine all past civilizations, or it may just as easily and tragically. The road to possible salvation and new higher achievements will never be found unless we first understand what the uh, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, you are audible.
And do you see the screen?
Yes,
Yes.
yes. Page number 19. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So, or it must end tragically. Road to possible salvation and new higher achievements will never be found unless man actually, what the new condition man actually is, and what the new role and responsibilities it entails. And then he goes on, from whatever angle, I do not know, the picture is now blocking the PPT. Can you do something so that I can see the PPT? Otherwise, I'll read from the text here. No problem. So, from whatever angle, the human condition, the problematic or human aspects, I cannot read the PPT. Can you see the whole PPT, Randir?
Yes, yes, yes.
But my screen is blocked by the photos here. How do I? Okay, okay, let me see.
Can you try
now,
again?
So now you can see, you can hear and see, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so let me go on like this. So from whatever angle the human condition and the problematic or human prospects are examined today, the decisive factor invariably turns out to be the human being himself. And we can add here the human being herself with his or her defects and qualities and his large, unused, even unexplored potential. It is not utopian to bank on the human revolution, which I am convinced is the prima and absolute condition for the development and the condition of our species at this stage of its evolution. And Fekete continues, all work should be carried out in the spirit of intellectual and scientific freedom and interdisciplinary cooperation, evidencing mankind's cultural diversity. From the organizational standpoint, it seems appropriate for the concept to be applied of networks of specific centers using social actors, non-governmental organizations, and ad hoc groups organized to collaborate towards a common goal in different parts of the world. And in a humble way, we are doing this, that we from different parts of the world, and these centers are not only just institutional centers. And here I remember a very beautiful line from Carlos' text that he has sent, that today the centers is everywhere, and each one of us is a center. And this morning I was reading Rumi, where he is saying, do not act so small because you are the universe. So therefore, today our planetary co-learning, it involves these kind of realities and realization. Learning also involves contingency, context, both context as well as creative collaboration among contexts. In thinking about learning, there is an idea of double contingency that fits. When you and me, we are talking with each other, the contingency of the self and the other. At the same time, that the contingency of the self, other, and the world, which our friend Pete Stridham calls the triple contingency. So today, planetary co-learning involves not only the triple contingency, self, other, and the world, but our idea of the world also has to be open. For example, our living planet. How do we live with our living planet? Here, this morning, I got to know the work of this very deep scientist and a poet, Robin Wall Kimmerer. And I'm sure Carlos would have known about, and many friends present would have known about her work. The name of one of her, out of her many books, one book is called Breeding the Sweet Grass. For example, the sweet grass, which is a grass in many parts of the world, including North America. Robin is a botanist. And she's saying when she started to learn the plant, love the plant, the first wonder she had that how is the living world is so beautiful. But once she brought that question to her study of science, her teacher discouraged her. This is not science, but it is the beautiful journey of a life like Robin, who is able to bring together the quest of science, the wonder of beauty, as well as the wisdom of one's own tradition, like her own Native American tradition. Moving on then, this whole journey of planetary co-learning involves love of the world. And Sri Aurobindo, for example, in his Savitri, he is saying, and I'm paraphrasing, he is saying that I am not interested, oh dear Lord, I am not interested in heaven. And I am also, of course, I do not want to stay in hell, but I'm interested in the terrestrial way. And that terrestrial way, that earth being together as each one of us emerging and being living and then moving towards the earth, that requires a love of each other, our plants, our animals, and labor, because learning involves labor. When Carlos talks about complexity thinking, the whole challenge of complexity thinking is to realize that learning is not always as simple as eating an ice cream. If we think that we can learn by looking at learning as eating an ice cream, then maybe we are deluding ourselves. There is an element of labor. So love, labor, and learning goes together. Here, another source of inspiration of Carlos, as he is the member of the International Batson Institute, is Grigory Batson, who talks about steps towards an ecology of mind, an ecological learning, and learning with our multiple senses. And here, as Robin is saying, that when we see a tree, how do we learn with a tree? How do we become a tree? Therefore, the learning with our multiple senses, because in modernity, we have only privileged a few senses like looking, eye, and observation. Our capacity to listen is very minimal, for example. But if we listen to the dogs, we can develop our capacity to listen. Today, when our leaders are behaving as gods, God, one calling of learning is for them to be dogs and as attentive as a dog. And you remember in our last meeting, our speaker, how he was saying that how his dog can hear even 3 blocks away when his car is coming. So from gods to dogs, we learn with both the gods and dogs together, learning being like a tree, mountain, and river. Speaking about complexity thinking, here I am also remembering Teilhard de Chardin, the great thinker, the and spiritual seeker who also traveled quite a lot. He talked about complexification of consciousness. But the idea of complexity is not to make life unnecessarily complicated. But the challenge is how do we combine the simple and the complex together? In a way, how do we bring Gandhi and Teilhard de Chardin and Sri Aurobindo? The simple is there are certain simple facts of life. For example, we all need to breathe. Breathing is more important than making money. And during our coronavirus, we learn it in the hard way. For example, if we need a bed, then we would like to give our kingdom for a bed. So therefore, that kind of ability to realize the simplicity of life, for example, breathing in the foundation of life, not cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. Yes, but before I think or as I think, I breathe, therefore I am. We breathe, therefore we are together. And as we move along, when we learn, learning is also asking questions to each other. And it is in that spirit I present this poem to you, which is offered to our dear friend Fitzridham. Oh friend, oh dear soul, you asked, the embrace of my heart. Our questions are not only questions, nor are they bumps nor edges of the soul. Our questions are flows, one and many, flows of our hearts, in between flowers and farmers. Our questions are our stories of bathing together and searching together, of being drowned and rising again. So, dear friends, I also want to say that our Swadhyaya Sahachkara learning journey is a journey which brings people from many backgrounds, including some of our brothers and sisters who uh, are more at ease in Odia than in English. So with your kindness, as it happens in other sessions of our learning, I will take a few minutes after 15 minutes of Carlos' presentation to translate some of these ideas into Odia. And so we'll continue our conversation. So this is my initial offering. And with this, with great joy, we look forward to listening and being with Carlos. And I just wanted to say that there is a familiar story, all road leads to Rome. But in the spirit of, as it is Club of Rome, and in the spirit of Carlos' paper, that our centers are everywhere. So Rome is everywhere. It is that spirit of learning. And secondly, that the Rome was not built in a day. And I think today, as our planet is in crisis, our ability to tend to our planet, to make our living planet more living again, or to make our dying planet. This is the title of the book by Sarala Behen, who was the inspiring co-worker of Gandhi, who was originally from Europe. And she went to stay in the Himalayas, in Kaushani, and established an ashram for learning of girl children. And one of her books is, reviving our dying planet. So, dear friend, today our dialogue is part of our effort. As we are with Club of Rome and the emerging new civilization perspective initiative of Club of Rome, and how do we be together as today this afternoon we are with Carlos to be part of our journey of reviving our planet. Thank you so much. And now a warm welcome to Carlos, please.
Sir, you can stop your presentation. Yes,
Yes.
yes, yes. Thank you.
I have also a presentation. Can I
Yes,
share?
yes,
Okay.
yes. Let me make you then co-host.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Now you can share your presentation, sir.
Do you see it?
Yes, yes. It is visible.
Okay, perfect. So, good evening, everybody, and many thanks to Ananta and Randir for inviting me and for organizing this dialogue. I feel grateful, of course, but also a bit impressed and humble because I am with this audience of distinguished people, scholars, poets, bringing on your shoulders the legacy of such a deep history, cultures, spiritual traditions, of which, while I feel myself as a son of all nations, I have to recognize that I think I know very little about the all the knowledge, the traditions, and the cultures you have as an heritage. So in a way, I'm not sure you will learn anything from myself. I'm absolutely sure I would learn a lot from you. So this is an honor and a privilege for me to be here with you. And I will try to tell what we are doing in the Club of Rome. I've prepared the presentation that, of course, I will send you, which is a bit long because I put a lot of elements, but I will do the presentation now short, going to the main points in order to have more time for open discussion. So the presentation has 4 parts, or 3 parts plus the discussion. One which I call taking leaps in sense making, which is, in my view, very important. But please be aware that I'm saying this from a Western perspective. This is where I'm not sure you will learn anything new in this part, because you have this multiplicity of worldviews. You are used to work and think and feel in this multiplicity of worldviews, at the very least from your own cultural traditions and the Western ones. But I feel what I say here in this part is extremely, I think it is extremely important to say in the Western world, where we are used not only to one perspective, but even to thinking that this is the only one possible. So my first message is, and that's what I'm doing in the Club of Rome, is a strong critique of the idea that there is only one worldview, or there are different worldviews, but one of them is the right one, is the most advanced one. And this is what I call taking leaps in sense making. So, starting with very simple examples, to get people out of their comfort zone about how do we see contradictions in Western thought. I mean, part of the Western thinking, of course, has elaborated a lot on dialectics and contradictions. But the mainstream is uncomfortable about contradictions, much more uncomfortable than other traditions, and particularly than Asian one. So, of course, this simple exercise that a circle cannot be a square is easily questioned, because if we observe a cylinder from different perspectives, yes, a circle can also be a square. A 6 can be a 9, or none of them, depending on the perspective we take, the lens we take. This is just to say, and for you, again, it might be absolutely obvious. It's not so obvious in the Western world that we don't have access to reality. We have perceptions. We perceive as human bodies, mostly in unconscious ways, because our ways of perception are mostly unconscious. And we don't translate those perceptions into objective knowledge. We translate them in some sort of conscious understanding through frameworks of interpretation, which sometimes are conscious or sometimes not. But for sure, the fact that we use certain frameworks of interpretation, even without knowing it, makes that we have blind spots. Each framework has blind spots. And I think there is no way, but this is my thinking, I might be wrong, there is no way of having a complete perspective. We will always have blind spots, but at least we know we have them. So we can change our interpretation and see things which in a previous framework we didn't see. For instance, you know that Western cultures are literally obsessed in a way with quantification, not so much with mathematics, which in itself is a language of expression, which owes so much, by the way, again, to the Indian civilizations, but particularly with the quantification and putting numbers on everything, you know, on every concept. You can hear many times, if you cannot measure, it doesn't exist, or if you cannot measure something, you cannot improve, or things like that. This is very typical. So my question to people is, how many apples are there here? I mean, there is no trick in the picture itself. Yes, of course, there are 3 apples. But if you take into account that apples are part of life, and if you put time in the picture, if you add time as a dimension of the picture, you realize that you cannot count. You never can count how many apples there are, because right now there might be 3, but in the future they might be infinite. So as simple as that, to get out of the framework of that things can be measured in quantified and in a closed way, in a finite way. Even how many stones, I mean, stones are not alive, of course, but time erodes them. So with time, they will convert themselves into grains of sand. So it's not even obvious how to count stones. More importantly, it's not even obvious who contains who. Does the seed contain the tree, or the tree contain the seed? Of course, both at the same time. So in many ways of thinking in the Western world, we are still trapped in mechanistic thinking, where things are put into boxes, and the boxes have clear borders, and things are defined in a simple way, so that there are no contradictions, and we know what each element is. But life is completely different from that. Where are the borders in any living context, in any ecosystem? No borders exist. A very important point in my view is questioning how measuring is done. And again, this obsession for measuring everything. And if it is part of a relationship, as in the sailing boat, the skipper of the boat is measuring in his or her body, and he knows how to do that. He has learned to do that, so it doesn't need to be anymore a conscious process. The body will measure the intensity and the direction of the wind, and depending on that, decisions will be taken. But this is always a relationship, because the boat doesn't exist. The boat exists, but the boat cannot move without this relationship with water and wind. And it's exactly the same in the case of a plane. The plane, of course, is a much more sophisticated artifact, a lot of technology in it, a lot of instruments for measurement. But again, I would say that the plane is even more fragile than the boat, because there is no water anymore, so a plane cannot float. The relationship with air is absolutely critical, and measuring is again a part of a relationship. But in many other cases, measuring is not part of a relationship, or it's much more about appropriation than about relationship. And I put this example of taking the balance sheet of any corporation. Do the numbers, do the quantifications present here represent relationships at a very basic level, but not in the richness of a relationship, because they are there to represent an appropriation and not geared toward the development of relationships. So in these taking leaps in sense making, my points are: beware of perceptions, of definitions, of borders, of measurements, of conscious purpose, because we're basically living beings, and the largest part of our intelligence is unconscious. And that's how we deal with the world, with the rest of life, with other living beings, with nature. We don't learn how to dance by conscious reasoning. And there are no clear borders, and important things are impossible to define without referring to themselves, which in the jargon is called impredicative. You cannot define life without referring to life itself. And a big question. Yep.
Maybe at this juncture, dear Carlos, if it is all right, I wish to request a few minutes to translate this into Odia.
Into what, sorry?
If it is all right, I request that I would translate your thoughts to one of the languages, Odia.
Okay.
I'll take a few minutes.
Okay, good.
So again, thank you, Carlos. And thank you all friends, non-Odia friends, for your generosity to be part of our conversation of our friends who are much more at ease with Odia. So ଆମର ଭାଇ ଭଉଣୀ ମାନେ ଆମର ଆଜି ବନ୍ଧୁ କାର୍ଲୋସ ଯୋଉ କଥା କହୁଛନ୍ତି ସେ କହୁଛନ୍ତି ଯେ ଆମେ କେମିତି ଶିଖିପାରିବା ଆଉ ତା ଆଗରୁ ମୁଁ ଯୋଉ କଥାଟି କହିଥିଲି ଆଜିର ଆମର ଯୋଉ ଆଲୋଚନା ଦି କ୍ଲବ ଅଫ ରୋମ୍ ଗୋଟେ ଭାରି ମହତ୍ୱପୂର୍ଣ୍ଣ ପ୍ରୟାସ ସେ ପ୍ରାୟ 1971 ମସିହାରେ ଆରମ୍ଭ ହେଇଥିଲା ସେତେବେଳେ ମୁଁ କହୁଥିଲି ଅରେଲିଓ ପେକେଇ ତାର ଯିଏ ପ୍ରତିଷ୍ଠାତା ସେ ମାନବ ବିଷୟରେ ଯାହା ସବୁ କହିଥିଲେ ଆପଣମାନେ ସେଥିରୁ କିଛି ସେନ୍ସ କରିପାରିଥିବେ ମୁଁ ଇଂରାଜୀରେ ଯାହା କହୁଥିଲି ଆଉ ଇଏ ଏଠି ଆମର କାର୍ଲୋସ ଏବେ କହୁଛନ୍ତି ଯେ ଆମେ କେମିତି ଶିଖିବା ଆମ ଶିଖିବା ପାଇଁ ଆମେ ଦେଖୁଛୁ ଯେ ଅନେକ ସମୟରେ ଆମର ବାସ୍ତବତା ଯାହା ଅଛି ରିଏଲିଟି ସେ ରିଏଲିଟି ପାଖକୁ ପହଞ୍ଚିବା ପାଇଁ ଆମର ଗୋଟେ ଆଗ୍ରହ ନାହିଁ କି ବାଟ ନାହିଁ ରିଏଲିଟି ସମ୍ପର୍କରେ ଆମର କିଛି ପରସେପସନ୍ସ ଅଛି ଯେମିତି ଆମେ ଦେଖୁଛୁ ଗୋଟେ ରିଏଲିଟିଟା ଗୋଟେ ବୃତ୍ତ ବା ଗୋଟେ सर्कल बा गोटे स्क्वायर किंतु स्क्वायर भितरे जे सर्कल थिबो बा सर्कल भितरे जे स्क्वायर थिबो सेटा हम हठात देखि पारुना एवं सेटा होछ हमर ब्लाइंड स्पॉट हमर गोटे गोटे देखिबार गोटे अंधता से अंधताटा जे वास्तवता भितरे अछि ताहानु सेटा हमर देखिबा भितरे अछि तेणु हमर ए जो ब्लाइंड स्पॉट गुडा के विषय आमे केमति सचेतन होबा केमति सेटा देखि परिबा आम जो देखू जाना भर आम पचारू जमी से एप्पल चित्र देखते जे केतेटा एप्पल वर्तमान रही आम देखुचे 3टा एप्पल रही किंतु जिते समय को आम घिनी आसवा से 3टा एप्पल रु जो से एप्पल रो मंजी गुड़ाक जीवे से 3टा एप्पल रु 300 एप्पल गछ तेणु जो समय को आम आनिबा आमर जो नंबर केतोटी पत्थर रही 3टी पत्थर अच्छी 3 लाख वर्ष पर ए पत्थर गुड़ाक घोरी घोरी आउ माने गणनाहीन रेणु रे परिणत हो तेणु आम जो काउंट करुचु जिते आम गणना करुचु से गणना भितर अनेक किछि रही आउ जहाँ किछि देखुचु एटा होछि 3टी जिनिस सेटा केवल एक कथा नुहे तार अनेक परिसर रही डायमेंशन रही आम जिते गोटे मंजी को देखुचु आ वृक्ष को देखुचु प्रश्न अच्छे मंजीटा गछ भितर अच्छी ना गछटा मंजी भितर अच्छी एवं देखिले आम उभयटा भितर उभय रही प्रकृत प्रकृति भितर कौन सीमा ना आम जहाँ जिते मापुचु से मापिबाटा गोटे संबंध क्षेत्र ही आमर से अन्वेषणटा चली क्षेत्र में जो चित्र देखते कार्लोस गोटे आमर जो बोट रो चित्र गोटे बोटे गोटे जहाजटे पानी रे जाउची पानी बिना जहाज कौन संभव कि तेणु जहाज कौन दरकार से पानी आ विंड रो माप नहीं कि जहाज रो माप करबा के ताकि सेमती तैयारी करबा के आपण माने जो माने सौद संदेश पढ़ी चित्त भाई द्वारा अनुदित एक्सपीरियर कर आपण देखुथिबे से जहाज संपर्क में जहाज सब कथा लिखाई ठीक सेमती गोटे जमी बुढ़ा जहाज अच्छा उड़ी उड़ी जाऊँ सेंट एक्सपीरी से जड़े पायलट थिले तेणु जमी उड़ा जहाजटा केमती पवन सहित चलुची तार जीवन आहुरी अधिक भंगुर तेणु एमती किसी कथा हमर कार्लोस कहते सो यस डियर कार्लोस now with thanks kindly do proceed.
Thank you. So these are some of the questions I put on the table in my speeches with our colleagues of the Club of Rome, but also other audiences to get us out of the traps of usual thinking of measuring and how can we use measuring to help the development of relationships instead of using measurement to define borders, to build exclusion between somebody and other beings, other human beings, other living beings, and so on. So to finish this part, my questions are, could we take care of what counts rather than counting what we think can be counted? Could we, I think it's when we talk about new concepts of civilizations, I think we have to look at the way our relationships with others, with other human beings, with living beings, and with time, how those relationships are organized. Are they organized in terms of exclusion and putting borders, or are they organized in terms of developing the relationships? And last but definitely not least, the blind spots and the ways we think makes us create tragedies which we tend to ignore. And probably we cannot avoid that. Creating tragedies, I mean, starting by the fact that we nurture ourselves from other living beings, we eat living beings, so that's already a strategy at the foundation of our human life, but we can choose not to ignore that and to give tribute to that life, or we can choose to ignore it, and then the consequences of those tragedies we create will come back in the future. So how could we recognize the tragedies we create and based on that find the path footprints of desirable futures? That's my question. You will find here, I will not go into detail, but some elements of the worldviews. One is on the left is modernity with Western predominance, some key elements of that worldview, and key elements of this worldview I call the fifth element, but it's not a new worldview that I have invented. It's made of a lot of sources of knowledge, many traditions coming together from many people around the world since the beginning of times, I would say, in which the most important, of course, is that we realize that our liberation comes from the relationships, which is very different from how we see things right now in many ways, where we think in terms of individuals, man at the center, and liberation comes from individual supremacy, which is, in my view, wrong. So could we learn, according to this change, this shift of perspectives, of worldviews will we be able to learn? Because learning is, and it was already quite evident in the what Ananta mentioned in his presentation. Learning is way beyond understanding something, the conscious understanding of something. It's about changing patterns, individually, collectively, as ecosystems. How do we change patterns based on what we know? Just to mention that, of course, this is very much related to the issue of power and the distribution of power and the unequal distribution of power. And to a large extent, and I love this quote by Karl Deutsch, power is the ability not to have to learn anything. My friend Nora Bateson, the daughter of Gregory, says that there is no difference between living and learning. When one is alive, one is constantly learning. So with this quote, this means that power is, in a way, the freezing of life, is somehow the opposite of life, is to be in a position to stop learning, hence to stop living. And Shimamanda Adichie from Nigeria makes, many years later, says something, and it's striking how the two sentences are complementary, because power is also the ability to tell a story and to make it the definitive one, and to tell, and in India, that I think much better than myself, probably better than anyone else in the world, Power, the ability to tell a story from outside about India, which fortunately has not been the definitive one, but has been the dominant one for many, many years. So with that, I conclude this part of taking leaps in sense making. You interrupt me whenever you want, Ananta, okay?
Maybe at this juncture.
Okay, good.
I can translate a bit, and it is not so much as interruption.
No, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
As weaving a loving thread of communication. So thank you, dear Carlos. And amaro bhai bhauni mane, amaro priya bandhu Carlos jaha kahile je agur jo kotha kahutla ami jeto ganuche amaro gananata କେବଳ ଏଇଟା ନୁହଁ ଯେ କେତୋଟି ବୃକ୍ଷରେ କେତୋଟି ଫଳ ଅଛି, ସେଟା ଗୋଟେ ସମ୍ବନ୍ଧ ଭିତରେ ସେଉଠୁ ସେ ଗୋଟେ ଭାରି ମହତ୍ୱପୂର୍ଣ୍ଣ ପଚାରୁଛନ୍ତି। ଆମେ ଯେତେବେଳେ ଗଣନା କରୁଛେ, ଗଣିବା କାହାକୁ ଗଣିବା? ଆମେ ଯୋଉଟା ଗଣିବା, ଯୋଉଟା ମହତ୍ୱପୂର୍ଣ୍ଣ ତାକୁ ଗଣିବା, ବା ଆମେ ଯାହା ଜାଣିଛୁ ତାକୁ ଗଣିବା। ଅର୍ଥାତ୍ ଆମେ ଜାଣିଛୁ ଆମର 5 ଆଙ୍ଗୁଳି ଅଛି, ତାକୁ ଆମେ ଗଣୁଛୁ, ବା ଆମେ ଜାଣିବା, ଆମେ ଗଣିବାକୁ ଚାହିଁବା ପ୍ରକୃତରେ କେତେ ସମୟ ଲାଗିବ, ଆମେ ଯୋଉଠି ଅଛୁ ଆଉ ଆମେ ଯୋଉ ପୃଥିବୀକୁ ଯାଉଛୁ ସେଥିପାଇଁ ଆମକୁ କ'ଣ କରିବାକୁ ହେବ, ଏଇଟା ବି ଗୋଟେ ଗଣନା। ଏବଂ ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ସେ ଯୋଉ କଥାଟି କହିଲେ ଯେ ଆମ ଭିତରେ ଯୋଉ ବ୍ଲାଇଣ୍ଡ ସ୍ପଟ ରହିଛି, ଆମ ଭିତରେ ଯୋଉ ଗୋଟେ ଅନ୍ଧାମି ରହିଛି, ଆଉ ସେ ଅନ୍ଧାମିଟା ପ୍ରକୃତରେ ଅନେକ ଟ୍ରାଜେଡି ସୃଷ୍ଟି କରୁଛି, ଅନେକ ଯନ୍ତ୍ରଣା ସୃଷ୍ଟି କରୁଛି, ଅନେକ ଯାତନା ସୃଷ୍ଟି କରୁଛି, ଅନେକ ଜୀବନକୁ ନଷ୍ଟ କରୁଛି। ତେଣୁ ଆମର ବ୍ଲାଇଣ୍ଡ ସ୍ପଟଟା କେବଳ ଇନୋସେଣ୍ଟ ନୁହେଁ, ଏବଂ ଗୋଟେ ନିରୀହ ଅନ୍ଧାମି ନୁହେଁ। ଯେମିତି ଆମ ମନେ ରଖିବା, ଏମିତି ଧୃତରାଷ୍ଟ୍ର ଅନ୍ଧ ହେଲେ, ସେ ମାନେ ଭୌତିକ ଦୃଷ୍ଟିରୁ ଅନ୍ଧ ହେଲେ, କିନ୍ତୁ ଧୃତରାଷ୍ଟ୍ର ଭୌତିକ ଦୃଷ୍ଟିରୁ ଅନ୍ଧ ହେଲେ ମଧ୍ୟ ସେ ଯଦି ତାଙ୍କର ଅନ୍ଧାମିକୁ ଟିକେ ଦେଖି ପାରିଥାନ୍ତେ, ଠିକ ଅଛି, ଦୁର୍ଯ୍ୟୋଧନ ଅଛି, ଆମର ଆଉ ଅନ୍ୟମାନେ ବି, ପାଣ୍ଡୁ, ତାଙ୍କ ସାନ ଭାଇ ପାଣ୍ଡୁ, ତାଙ୍କର ପିଲାମାନେ ବି ଅଛନ୍ତି। ତେଣୁ ସମସ୍ତଙ୍କର ରାଜ୍ୟ ସହିତ ସମାନ ଯାତ୍ରା ରହିଛି, ସେଟା ଯଦି ଦେଖି ପାରିଥାନ୍ତେ ସିଏ, ତେଣୁ ଏତେ ହନନ, ଏତେ ନଷ୍ଟ ହେଇଥାନ୍ତା କି? ତେଣୁ ଏଇଟା ଗୋଟେ ଭାରି ମହତ୍ୱପୂର୍ଣ୍ଣ କଥା। ଆମେ ଯାହା ନ ଦେଖି ପାରୁଛୁ ସେଇଟା କେବଳ ଆମ ପାଇଁ ଦୁଃଖଦାୟକ ନୁହଁ, ତା ଦ୍ୱାରା ଅନେକ ଯାତନା, ଯନ୍ତ୍ରଣା ଏବଂ ଜୀବନ ହାନି ଆମେ ସୃଷ୍ଟି କରୁଛୁ। ଏହା ସହିତ ଏଇ ଯୋଉ ନୂଆ ପ୍ରକାର ଯୋଉ ଶିଖିବାର ଧାରାଟି ଯାହାକୁ କାର୍ଲକ୍ସ ଦି ଫିଫ୍ଥ ଏଲିମେଣ୍ଟ ବୋଲି କହୁଛନ୍ତି, ଗୋଟେ ପଞ୍ଚମ ପ୍ରକାର ଏକ ଏଲିମେଣ୍ଟ, ସେଇଟା ଆଧୁନିକତାରେ ଆମେ ଯାହା ଶିଖୁଛୁ ତାଠାରୁ ଅଲଗା। ଆଧୁନିକତାରେ ଆମେ ବିଶ୍ୱାସ କରୁଛୁ ଜଣେ ମଣିଷ ନିଜେ ହିଁ ସବୁ କିଛି କରିପାରିବ, କିନ୍ତୁ ଏଇ ଫିଫ୍ଥ ଏଲିମେଣ୍ଟ ଧାରାରେ ମୂଳ କଥା ହଉଛି ରିଲେସନସିପ। ଯଦି ମୁକ୍ତି ହବ, ଆମେ ଗୋଟେ ସମ୍ବନ୍ଧ ଭିତରେ ହିଁ ଥାଇକି ଗୋଟେ ମୁକ୍ତିର ଧାରା ହେଇପାରିବ। ଏଇ କ୍ଷେତ୍ରରେ ଆମେ ଶ୍ରୀ ଅରବିନ୍ଦଙ୍କ କଥା ମଧ୍ୟ ମନେ ପକେଇ ପାରିବା, ଯିଏ କହୁଛନ୍ତି ଜଣେ ଅବତାର ବି ଆସିଲେ ସେ ସଂସାରକୁ ବଦଳେଇ ପାରିବେନି ଯଦି ଅବତାରଙ୍କ ସହିତ ଆଉ କିଛି ଲୋକ ଖାଉଛି, ଭାଇ ଭଉଣୀ ଆଉ ପିଲା ବୃଦ୍ଧ ଗୋଟେ ସହ ଅବତାର ନୁହନ୍ତି, ସେଇଟା ସମ୍ଭବ ନୁହଁ। ଏହା ସହିତ ଲର୍ଣ୍ଣିଂ ଆଉ ଯୋଉ ଆହ୍ୱାନ ତାକୁ ବୁଝିବାକୁ ହେଲେ କାର୍ଲ ଡଏଚ୍ ବୋଲି ଜଣେ ଚିନ୍ତାବିତ ସେ କହୁଛନ୍ତି, ଯାହା ପାଖରେ କ୍ଷମତା ରହିଛି ତା ପାଖରେ କ୍ଷମତା ରହିଛି ଏଇ ଦୃଷ୍ଟିରୁ ସେ ଭାବୁଛି ଯେହେତୁ ମୋ ପାଖରେ କ୍ଷମତା ଅଛି ମତେ କିଛି ଶିଖିବାକୁ ହବନି। ଆମେ ଦେଖୁଛୁ ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ କୋଭିଡ-19 କ୍ଷେତ୍ରରେ ଆମର ଯୋଉମାନେ କ୍ଷମତାସୀନ ମାନେ, ଜଣେ ନିର୍ବାଚିତ ପ୍ରଧାନମନ୍ତ୍ରୀ, ସିଏ କଣ ତା ଅର୍ଥ କଣ ସେ ଭାଇରୋଲୋଜି ବିଷୟରେ ଭାଇରସ ବିଷୟରେ ଜାଣିଛନ୍ତି? ସେ ଭାଇରସ ବିଷୟରେ କାହା ପାଖରୁ ଶିଖିବେ? ସେ ତାଙ୍କର ପଲିଟିକାଲ କନସଲଟେଣ୍ଟ ମାନଙ୍କ ପାଖରୁ ଶିଖିବେ ନା ଜଣେ ଭାଇରୋଲୋଜିଷ୍ଟ ପାଖରୁ ଶିଖିବେ? ଆମେ ଦେଖିଲୁ ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ଆମ ଦେଶରେ ଯୋଉମାନେ ଅକ୍ସିଜେନ ଅଭାବରୁ ମରୁଛନ୍ତି, ଜୀବନ ମୃତ୍ୟୁ ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ଯୋଉ ତାଣ୍ଡବ ଲୀଳା ଭିତରେ ଆମେ ଯାଉଛୁ, ତାର ମୂଳ କଥା କଣ? ଯୋଉମାନେ କ୍ଷମତାରେ ଅଛନ୍ତି ସେମାନେ ଯଦି ଅନ୍ୟଠାରୁ ଶିଖିଥାନ୍ତେ, ଆଉ ଆମେ କଣ ଏଇ ମୃତ୍ୟୁର ଆଉ ଏତେ ଅସହାୟ ବିଷୟରେ ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ଶ୍ମଶାନ ଭିତରକୁ ଯାଉଥାନ୍ତୁ କି? ଠିକ ସେମିତି ଆଡିଛି, ଚିମାମଣ୍ଡା ଆଡିଛି ଆଉ ସେ ଜଣେ ସୋସିଓଲୋଜିଷ୍ଟ ଭାରି ମହତ୍ୱପୂର୍ଣ୍ଣ କଥାଟି କହୁଛନ୍ତି ଯେ କ୍ଷମତା ହଉଛି ସେଇ ଜିନିଷ ଯାହା ଫଳରେ ଆମେ ଭାବୁଛୁ ମୁଁ ଯାହା କହୁଛି ମୋର କାହାଣୀଟି ଏକମାତ୍ର କାହାଣୀ ଏବଂ ଅନ୍ୟମାନଙ୍କ ପାଖରେ ମୋର କାହାଣୀଟି କହିଲା ବେଳେ ମୁଁ କହିବି ଯେ ତୁମ କାହାଣୀ ଠିକ ନୁହଁ, ମୋ କାହାଣୀ ସତ୍ୟ ଏବଂ ଏକମାତ୍ର ସତ୍ୟ। ତେଣୁ ଏଇ ଯୋଉ କ୍ଷମତା ଆଉ ଶିକ୍ଷଣର ଯୋଉ ଧାରା ଏବଂ ଏହି କ୍ଷେତ୍ରରେ କ୍ଷମତାକୁ ବୁଝିବାକୁ ହେଲେ ଆର୍ନୋଲ୍ଡ ଯୋସେଫ ଟଏନବି, ସେ ଜଣେ ଭାରି ଗଭୀର ଇତିହାସକାର ଥିଲେ। ସେ କହୁଛନ୍ତି ମଣିଷ ସମାଜରେ ଯେତେବେଳେ ମଣିଷ କ୍ଷମତାକୁ ସବୁ କିଛି ବଳି ଧରିକି ନିଏ, ସେତେବେଳେ ପ୍ରକୃତରେ ଯନ୍ତ୍ରଣାର ଆରମ୍ଭ ହୁଏ। ଆମର ଚିତ୍ତ ଭାଇ ମଧ୍ୟ ସେ ଦୁଇଟି କଥା କହୁଛନ୍ତି ଯେ କ୍ଷମତା ଭିତରେ ଯେତେବେଳେ ମଣିଷ ବାନ୍ଧି ହେଇଯାଏ, ସେ କ୍ଷମତା ଜାରରେ ପଡ଼ିଗଲେ ସେ ଜାଣିପାରେନି ଯେ କ୍ଷମତାଟା ହିଁ ସବୁ କିଛି, କିନ୍ତୁ ପ୍ରକୃତରେ ଜୀବନର ଅନେକ ଜିନିଷ ଯାହା ସମ୍ଭବ ହୁଏ ତାହା ଶ୍ରଦ୍ଧା ବଳରେ। ଶ୍ରଦ୍ଧା ଆଉ ଶିକ୍ଷା ପାଇଁ ଯେଉଁ ବାଟଟି ଦରକାର, ସେଥିପାଇଁ ଆମେ ଯେତେବେଳେ କ୍ଷମତାକୁ ହିଁ ସବୁ କଥା ଜାଣିଦେବା ଯେ ମୋର କେତେ କ୍ଷମତା ତୁମ ଉପରେ, ତୁମର କେତେ କ୍ଷମତା ମୋ ଉପରେ, ସେଇ ଯେମିତି କାଲକୁଲେସନ ଭିତରେ ରହିବା, ସେ ପର୍ଯ୍ୟନ୍ତ ଆମେ ଲର୍ଣ୍ଣିଂ କରିପାରିବା ନାହିଁ। So dear friend Carlos, it was my translation, but while translating I also refer to Arnold Joseph Toynbee, and when you brought Carl Deutsch, power and the not ability to learn, and Toynbee is saying that in human life when we idolize power, then we forget the fragility of life. We forget that suffering is also a part of life. That does not mean that we are destined to suffer, but having that vulnerability, having that humility before suffering, its ability to transfer requires a critical attitude to idolatry of power.
Absolutely.
So, dear Carlos, please help us continue.
Thank you. Thank you. So now the second part of my presentation is about the strategy the Club of Rome is now following. I think you know already some about the history of the Club of Rome. We were created 53 years ago by Aurelio Peccei and a small group of personalities who decided to take something which was very original at the time, again in the Western world, which is thinking about the future of humanity and the issues and the challenges in a way which lead to this idea of the world problematique, because they realized that the existing model of human development couldn't be maintained forever and would be unsustainable. But they decided to take a vision, holistic, global, of all of the whole and the parts, systemic perspective, analyzing how everything is related to everything else, and also long term. And we keep this tradition alive, and we try to honor that tradition. And nowadays, 2 years ago, we decided to take this lemma, this slogan, who is also from Nora Bateson, emergence from emergency, or emerging from emergency, which I see as an approach with two legs, two different legs. And because the question is, the Club of Rome intends to provoke thinking, to ask better questions, to provoke learning, and in order to develop a better future than the one we are going to. But there is the question that, is that an exercise of developing something that we already know? Is the future scripted? We know what needs to be done to have a better future, and it's a matter of doing it, or it is fundamentally unscripted. And we need then to learn new ways of becoming human. This is my expression. Is our action about implementation or about exploration, or both? And we established what we call five impact hubs, which are areas, thematic areas, where members of the club, but also people who are not members of the club, we are partnering with individuals and organizations outside the club in each of these five areas, of these five thematic areas, of which planetary emergency is about raising the awareness of the emergencies. And I don't need to explain you anything about emergencies, especially because I know the so difficult situation in which you are now due to COVID, and all my solidarity in these so difficult circumstances. Reframing economics and rethinking finance is about having a critical perspective on the concepts of economics and the practices of finance which exist now. But emerging new civilizations, which I co-lead with our dear co-president Mampela Rampele from South Africa, is about what new can emerge out of these emergencies. What kind of future or futures can we imagine in which we would be able to rebalance well-being, human well-being in a healthy biosphere? And to do that in collaboration with younger generations, which is the fifth hub, which I lead in collaboration with Paul Shrivastava, another member of the club from India, but based in Pennsylvania. So these are the five areas of program that we are leading. But the idea behind the emergence is emerging from emergency, is very much about crossing a threshold. I think we are at a critical moment of the history of humanity, which in a very, very simple way, in a simplistic way, I represent here as a bifurcation between either going into collapse of human cultures, violence, misery. We have, of course, a lot of that, but it can become worse. Or trying to make emerge new cultures, new civilizations where well-being, human well-being is balanced, is equitable, and is achieved within a healthy biosphere. In a way, the graphic representation I use for this moment where we are is that of Alice. Alice, when she's going through the looking glass. We are, if we stay on this side of the looking glass, we are only seeing ourselves and our past, and we continue with the practices which are destroying in a way, which are provoking the suicide of humanity. And we have so many emergencies that I don't need to get into details. But so I think we need to go through the looking glass. But let's realize that we don't know what is on the other side of the looking glass. And Alice did have a lot of surprises of unexpected things happening on the other side. So the question is no longer, let's imagine, let's plan for the future in a linear way, you know, let's imagine the future we want and let's do it. It's much more about let's walk together and let's explore and let's learn about that future, how that future can be a warm place instead of a very cold and dark place. So this is what we do, having this, balancing these two aspects of emergence and from emergence and emergency, the aspects of trying to influence policy making and top-down transformation, if you want, with the other aspect of cultural change and how to create the conditions for that change to happen, which is much more bottom-up perspective. And we are learning to live with these two, you know, aspects, with these two legs, which sometimes may look as contradictory. In a way, we are trying to be more Asian than Western in that sense, and learn about, among many other traditions, yin and yang. Something we realized in 2020, a number of things. Well, as Ananta, it was fantastic that he used some quotes from Aurelio Peccei, and in particular this idea of the human revolution, which is in the spirit of the Club of Rome since the 70s. And so it's what we're doing is in a way reconnecting with that emergence is a cultural transformation, that we have to shift from the perception of separation or the obsession of separation and exclusion and scarcity to the perception of relatedness, relationships that are the core, and abundance, perception of abundance. We have to build on the pluriversality of perspectives. I only mention Ubuntu in this slide, but of course there are many others. Be deeper in learning, opening conversations with unheard voices, especially from those from what I call most of the world. 6 out of 7 people on the world are not Westerners. And we have to engage in these dialogues, even if they are difficult to engage, even if they are not comfortable, even if we will not always listen what we would like to listen, but it is fundamental. And I very much hope that the momentum of people from most of the world, the momentum from women, half of humanity, going through such a deep transformation in their role and status in societies, and the momentum of younger generations will make us take the leap in creating these new civilizations. So coming back to Aurelio Peccei, I love this quote. What we all need at this point in human evolution is to learn what it takes to learn what we should learn, and learn it. He said this 42 years ago, and it's still completely valid, and I have the feeling that the task is still pending, right? So in this context, I wrote, with the help of many others, I wrote a paper that I can share with you as well, of course, titled Learning New Ways of Becoming Human. So framing what we have to do as a huge exercise of learning and learning together, and what Ananta calls planetary co-learning. Maybe, Ananta, you want to interrupt here before I get into the last slides on the
Yes.
fifth.
Yes, thank you, Carlos. ଆଉ ଆମର ଭାଇ ଭଉଣୀ ମାନେ ଇତିମଧ୍ୟରେ କାର୍ଲୋସ୍ ଏଇ ଯୋଉ କ୍ଲବ ଅଫ୍ ରୋମ୍ କଥା ଆମେ କହୁଥିଲୁ ସେଇ ବିଷୟରେ ଅଧିକ ସିଏ କହୁଛନ୍ତି ଯେ କେମିତି କ୍ଲବ ଅଫ୍ ରୋମ୍ 1968 ମସିହାରେ ପ୍ରତିଷ୍ଠିତ ହେଇଥିଲା। ଆଉ ତାପରେ ତାର ବିଭିନ୍ନ ପ୍ରକାର ଇନିସିଏଟିଭ୍ ରହିଛି। ଗୋଟେ ହେଉଛି ପ୍ଲାନେଟାରୀ ଏମର୍ଜେନ୍ସି, ଯୋଉଟା ଆମର ପୃଥିବୀଟା ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ଗୋଟେ ଜରୁରୀକାଳୀନ ଅବସ୍ଥାରେ କେମିତି ଅଛି ଆପଣମାନେ ଜାଣୁଥିବେ, ଜଳବାୟୁ ପରିବର୍ତ୍ତନ ଆଉ କୋଭିଡ। ତାପରେ ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ଇନିସିଏଟିଭ୍ ତାର ହେଉଛି, ତାର ନାମ ହେଉଛି ଏମର୍ଜିଂ ନ୍ୟୁ ସିଭିଲାଇଜେସନ୍, ଅର୍ଥାତ୍ ଏକ ନୂତନ ସଭ୍ୟତାର ଯେଉଁ ଅଭ୍ୟୁଦୟ ଘଟୁଛି। ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ଇନିସିଏଟିଭ୍ ହେଉଛି ୟୁଥ୍ ଆଣ୍ଡ ଇଣ୍ଟରନ୍ୟାସନାଲ ଡାଇଲଗ୍। ଆଉ ଆମର ଯୁବକ ଯୁବତୀ ଏବଂ ଆମର ଦେଶ ସଂସ୍କୃତି ଭିତରେ ଯେଉଁ ସଂଳାପ, ତା ସହିତ ଯେଉଁ ଇକୋନୋମିକ୍ସ ଅର୍ଥନୀତିକୁ କେମିତି ନୂଆ କରି ଆମେ ବଦଳେଇ ପାରିବା, ଭାବିପାରିବା, ଆଉ ରିଥିଙ୍କିଂ ଫାଇନାନ୍ସ, ଆଉ ଆମର ଅର୍ଥ ଆଉ ମନିକୁ କେମିତି ଆମେ ଅଲଗା କରିକି ତାକୁ ସୃଷ୍ଟି କରିପାରିବା। ଆଉ ଏହା ସହିତ ଯେ ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ଆମେ ଯେଉଁ ଗୋଟେ ଘଡ଼ିସନ୍ଧି ମୁହୂର୍ତ୍ତରେ ରହିଛୁ, ସେଟାରେ ଗୋଟେ ଦୁଇଟି ବାତ। ଗୋଟେ ହେଉଛି ଆମେ ଅଲରେଡ଼ି ଗୋଟେ ପ୍ରକାର ପତନ ଆଡ଼କୁ ଯାଉଛୁ, ଯେମିତି ଅନେକ ଜିନିଷ ଭୁଷୁଡ଼ି ପଡ଼ୁଛି। ଯେମିତି ଆମ ଆଗରେ ଆମର ପରିଚିତ ଅନେକ ଲୋକ ସେମାନେ ଚାଲି ଯାଉଛନ୍ତି, କଲାପ୍ସ, ସବୁ ଜିନିଷଟେ ପଡ଼ିଯାଉଛି, ଭୁଷୁଡ଼ି ପଡ଼ୁଛି। ତା ସହିତ ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ବାଟ ଅଛି, ଯଦି ଆମେ ସଚେତନ ହେବା, ଆମେ ଯଦି ଅଲଗା ପଥଟି ବଢ଼ି ନେବା, ତାହେଲେ ଏମିତି ଗୋଟେ ସମ୍ବନ୍ଧ ସମାଜ ଆମେ ସୃଷ୍ଟି କରିପାରିବା ଯାହାକୁ ସେ ଇକ୍ୱିଟେବଲ୍ ୱେଲବିଂ, ଅର୍ଥାତ୍ ସମାନ ମଙ୍ଗଳର ଏକ ପୃଥିବୀ, ଆଉ ଯେଉଁଠିକି ସେଇ ପୃଥିବୀଟା ଗୋଟେ ହେଲ୍ଦି ବାୟୋସ୍ଫିୟର, ଗୋଟେ ସୁସ୍ଥ ଆଉ ଜୈବ ମଣ୍ଡଳରେ ସେଇଟା ରହୁଛି, ଯେଉଁଥିରେ ମନୁଷ୍ୟ ଜୀବ ସବୁ ପ୍ରାଣୀମାନେ ଗୋଟେ ସୁସ୍ଥ ମଙ୍ଗଳ ଭିତରେ ସେମାନେ ବଞ୍ଚୁଛନ୍ତି ଏବଂ ବଞ୍ଚିପାରିବେ। ତେଣୁ ଆପଣମାନଙ୍କ ଭିତରୁ ଶୁଣିଥିବେ ଯେଉଁ ଇଂରାଜୀ ବହିଟେ ଆଲିସ୍ ଇନ୍ ୱାଣ୍ଡରଲ୍ୟାଣ୍ଡ, ଯେଉଁ ଚିତ୍ରଟି ସେ ଦେଖେଇଲେ, ଆଲିସ୍ ଯେତେବେଳେ ଦର୍ପଣରେ ଦେଖୁଛି, ଆଉ ଆଲିସ୍କୁ ଦେଖିଲେ ଦର୍ପଣରେ ଖାଲି ଗୋଟେ ଜିନିଷ ଦେଖାଯାଉଛି, କିନ୍ତୁ ତା ସହିତ ଗୋଟେ ନୂତନ ଭବିଷ୍ୟତ ମଧ୍ୟ ରହିଛି। ସେ ନୂତନ ଭବିଷ୍ୟତ ପାଇଁ ଯେଉଁ ପ୍ରକାର ପରିବର୍ତ୍ତନ ଦରକାର, ତା ସହିତ ଗୋଟେ ସାଂସ୍କୃତିକ ରୂପାନ୍ତର ଆବଶ୍ୟକ। ଆଉ ସେଇ ସାଂସ୍କୃତିକ ରୂପାନ୍ତରରେ ଆମକୁ ସ୍ୱୀକାର କରିବାକୁ ହେବ ଯେ ଏଇ ପୃଥିବୀରେ ଅନେକ ପ୍ରକାର ସ୍ୱର ରହିଛି, ଅନେକ ପ୍ରକାର ଦୃଷ୍ଟିକୋଣ ରହିଛି। ଯେମିତି ସେ କହିଲେ ଯେ ମଡର୍ଣ୍ଣ ସାଇନ୍ସ, ଆଧୁନିକ ବିଜ୍ଞାନ, ଆଫ୍ରିକାରେ ଉବୁଣ୍ଟୁ ଗୋଟେ ଚିନ୍ତା, ଯେଉଁଥିରେ କୁହାଯାଏ ଯେ ମୁଁ ଅଛି କାରଣ ଆପଣମାନେ ଅଛନ୍ତି। ଆଇନଷ୍ଟାଇନ ମଧ୍ୟ କହୁଥିଲେ we are here because of other people। ତେଣୁ ସାଇନ୍ସର ଦୃଷ୍ଟିଟା ଯେ ସାଇନ୍ସ ସବୁବେଳେ ସମସ୍ତଙ୍କୁ ସ୍ୱୀକାର କରେ ହିଁ ଆମର ସ୍ଥିତିଟାକୁ ଦେଖିଥାଏ। ଆଉ ଉବୁଣ୍ଟୁର ମଧ୍ୟ ସେଇ କଥାଟି ଠିକ୍ ସେମିତି ଆମ ଭାରତ ବର୍ଷରେ ଯେଉଁ ଦୃଷ୍ଟିକୋଣ ସବୁ ରହିଛି, ବେଦାନ୍ତ, ବୁଦ୍ଧ ଚିନ୍ତା, ସୁଫିଜମ, ତେଣୁ ଏହିସବୁ ବିଭିନ୍ନ ପ୍ଲୁରିଭର୍ସାଲିଟି, ଯେଉଁ ବହୁବିଧତା, ଆମର ଭାଇ ଭଉଣୀମାନେ ଆମେ ଗୋଟେ ୱାର୍କସପ୍ କରିଥିଲେ ବହୁଧାର ବର୍ଣ୍ଣ ବିଭାଗ। ତେଣୁ ବହୁବିଧତା ସହିତ ଆମର ଏକ ଯେଉଁ ସାଂସ୍କୃତିକ ରୂପାନ୍ତର ଆବଶ୍ୟକ, ସେଇଥିରେ ସେ ଅରେଲିଓ ପେକେଇ ଯାହାଙ୍କ କଥା ମୁଁ କହୁଥିଲି, ଯେ କ୍ଲବ ଅଫ୍ ରୋମ୍ର ପ୍ରତିଷ୍ଠାତା, ତାଙ୍କର ଗୋଟେ ବହି ଅଛି ନୋ ଲିମିଟ୍ସ ଟୁ ଲର୍ଣ୍ଣିଂ, ଅର୍ଥାତ୍ ଶିକ୍ଷାର କୌଣସି ସୀମା ନାହିଁ। ଏବଂ ସେଥିରେ ସେ କହୁଛନ୍ତି ଆମ ଆଗରେ ମୂଳ ଆହ୍ୱାନ ହେଉଛି ଯେ ଆମକୁ ଯାହା ଶିଖିବାର କଥା ତାହା ଆମେ କେମିତି ଶିଖିପାରିବା, ହ୍ୱାଟ୍ ୱି ସୁଡ୍ ଲର୍ନ। ଏଇଟା ତାହେଲେ ମୂଳ ପ୍ରଶ୍ନ ହେଉଛି ଆମେ କ'ଣ ଶିଖିବା। ଆମେ ଯଦି ଭାବିବା ଯେ ଅନ୍ୟର ଗଳା କାଟିବା, ସେଇଟା କ'ଣ ଆମର ଶିଖିବା ଦରକାର କି? ଅନେକ ଜିନିଷ ଅଛି ଯେ ଗଳା କାଟିଲେ ହୁଏତ ଆମେ ସାମୟିକ କିଛି ଗୋଟେ ଆମର ଅହଙ୍କାର ବା ଗୋଟେ କିଛି ଗୋଟେ କ୍ରୋଧର ସେଇଟା ପରିପୂରଣ ଘଟିବ, କିନ୍ତୁ ଏଇଟା ଆମେ ଶିଖିବା ଦରକାର କି ଯେ କେମିତି ଅନ୍ୟର ଗଳା କରିବାକୁ ପଡ଼ିବ। ତେଣୁ ପଚେଇ କହୁଛନ୍ତି ଯେ ଆମକୁ ଯାହା ଶିଖିବାକୁ ହବ, ତେଣୁ କ'ଣ ଶିଖିବା ସେଇଟା ପ୍ରଶ୍ନ କରିବା। ଯେମିତି କଥା କୁହାଯାଇଛି କସ୍ମେଇ ଦେବାୟ ହବିଷମ୍ ବିଧେୟ, ଆମେ କାହାକୁ ପୂଜା କରିବା? ଯଦି ଆମେ ଅପଦେବତା ମାନଙ୍କୁ ପୂଜା କରିବା ତାହେଲେ ଆମ ଜୀବନ ନଷ୍ଟ ହେଇଯିବ। ତେଣୁ ଆମେ ଏମିତି ଜିନିଷ ଶିଖିବା ଯାହା ଆମକୁ ପ୍ରକୃତରେ ବିକଶିତ କରେଇବ, ଏବଂ ଯାହା ଆମକୁ ଶିଖିବାର କଥା ସେଇଟା ଆମେ କେମିତି ଶିଖିବା ଏବଂ ତାହା ଆମେ ଶିଖିବା। So dear Carlos, it was my rendering of your thought, and now please continue.
Thank you so much. So the last part of my presentation is about the fifth element, which is an initiative we started early this year in the Club of Rome to create a space, an invitation. The fifth element is an invitation, actually, to people from everywhere, as Ananta kindly remembered. I love this expression that the center of the world is everywhere. An invitation to people from everywhere to be parts of, to be companions in this journey of learning, learning new ways of becoming human, and giving birth to new balances of well-being within the biosphere. And just as an example of when we say deeper learning, what were we talking about? In the context of sustainable development and the sustainable development goals and the Paris Agreement on climate change, a lot is about, transitioning from fossil fuels to renewable energies. But my question is that really the question? Is that really the issue? If the question is what and how much energy do we need, we could say, well, there is a fixed response, which is fossil fuels, on ever and ever more fossil fuels. We are still there because the world is still basically living on fossil fuels. The same question with a different response is, okay, shifting to renewable energies, solar, wind, etc. But we will need, for our well-being, a growing amount of energy, even if they are renewables. But then this cannot be the answer, right? Because we live in a finite planet. So a starting point of reframing the question is saying maybe we can decouple well-being so that we can grow in well-being, we can grow in human development without growing in energy consumption. But ultimately, we have, I think, to change the question, and this is a deeper one, which is, are we looking, is our life about consuming energy? Do we live to consume energy, or do we consume energy to life? And if so, what is the driver of well-being? Is it energy consumption? No, we know well, and we know from ancient wisdom, all cultures have that embedded in their wisdom. But even modern science, the irony is that modern science sometimes needs centuries to rebuild something we knew from the very beginning, which is that what drives health and well-being is the quality of our relationships with others, with other living beings, and with time. So this is an example of what we call deeper learning, in which we think the unknown cannot be taught, it has to be explored, in which we think everybody is able to learn and to be a systems thinker. Everybody is able to do that. That capacity is in every child, everywhere. It just has to be preserved. And people need safe spaces to do that, to explore the unscripted and to learn. And different generations have to learn together, and communities and specialists have to learn together, and we have to overcome separation. Because life is relational. So these are the principles under which we created this initiative called the fifth element, life for learning, learning for life. Why the fifth element? It's a tribute to traditions, to ancient traditions, you know, to the four elements of air, water, fire, and earth. Sorry, and the four elements in many ancient traditions in different parts of the world. But knowing that in all those traditions there is a singular element which is at the same time a mystery, which is the spirit of life, the momentum of life, the life impulse, the fifth element in many of those traditions. I think in Indian traditions it is called, but this is what I understand, but I'm not sure. This is called prana. It is called chi in Taoism, you know, the spirit of life. So it's a tribute both to ancient traditions and to the fact that life is beyond our conscious understanding, and it's about building at the same time from ancient wisdom and the parts of modern science who are closer to life, who are inspired in life, not every piece of modern science, you know. And also the needs and the views of people who are disempowered, which is most of humanity actually, who are disempowered, and we need them to learn collectively a new path. So this is what it is about learning as an exercise of societal transformations. Learning as something which do not only happens in schools or universities, it happens, as I said before, no difference between learning and living. It's lifelong learning for sure, and it's mutual and it's experiential, and out of learning we can create something new. So I will go fast on this. You will have the presentation. The idea is that we live in societies which are not learning. So that's quite provocative when I say this, because we tend to think that we are very sophisticated. We have societies of high technologies and so on and so on. But actually what we see in the last decade is that we have not learned what we know, that the future is not sustainable as it is. And we developed a methodology, but don't take me wrong, this is not something written in stone. This is a very general framework, and as I said before, an invitation, and a flexible one, you know, so that we can work on this with anybody willing to go deep enough in the processes of learning. We think this needs to broadening the perception, changing the stage, the roles, the process, the evaluation, all that is needed. But that can be done in a multiplicity of ways, of course. And with, as I already said before, with particularly with people who are feeling more helpless or in need of change, what I call here the front line. Most of the world, youth, women, vulnerable communities, and so on. So we have developed a methodology, an iterative methodology to go forward in this process. Our ambition is to reach in 3 to 5 years. We are working, this is working at the same time from the perspective of youth and the perspective of emerging new civilizations. You know, we put this magic number of 10,000 young activists and 10,000 communities in 3 to 5 years from now. And we are working with a number of partners, including UNESCO on this and the International Bateson Institute. And we will launch this next Wednesday, a circle of learning for sustainability in the context of this platform, Learning Planet. I will send you later an invitation to attend that, because it's about creating partnerships and connections, especially the most of the logos you see in this slide are dominated by the global north. I'm not a lover of that expression, but we certainly look for more partners in, let's say, the global south. Possible Future is a network of young ladies from Philippines, India, Africa, and Latin America. So very interesting one. So that's it. What I wanted to share with you, my dear friends. Ananta, I leave you completing the translation before going into the discussion.
Thank you, Carlos. And dear friends, in the chat box I read a request to speak in English or Hindi. To our dear new friends, I just wanted to request your kind consideration that some of our friends in this journey, they are not so easy with either English or Hindi, and therefore I'm taking a very little time to translate into Odia. I therefore seek your kindness so that all of us are part of this journey of learning. So ଆମର ବନ୍ଧୁ ମାନେ ଭାଇ ଭଉଣୀ ମାନେ କାର୍ଲୋସ ତାଙ୍କର ଶେଷ ପର୍ଯ୍ୟାୟରେ ଯେଉଁ କଥା ସବୁ କହିଲେ ଯେ ସେଇ ଯାହା ସବୁ ଆଗକୁ କୁହାଯାଇଥିଲା ତାକୁ ସେ ଆହୁରି ଅଧିକ ବ୍ୟାଖ୍ୟା କଲେ ଯେ ଯେମିତି ଗୋଟେ ନୂଆ ପ୍ରକାର ଆମେ ଶିଖିବା ସେ ଶିଖିବାଟାରେ କେମିତି ହେଉଛି ଯେ ଆମେ ମନେକର ଆମର ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ଆମର ଯେଉଁ ଅଏଲ ଯେଉଁ ତେଲ ସରିଯାଉଛି ତେଣୁ ସେଇ କ୍ଷେତ୍ରରେ ଫିକ୍ସଡ ରେସ୍ପନ୍ସ ହେଉଛି ଓ ତେଲ ସରିଗଲା। ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ କଥା ଆମେ ଭାବିପାରିବା ଠିକ୍ ଅଛି ତେଲଟା ଆମର ସରିଯାଉଛି କିନ୍ତୁ ରିନ୍ୟୁଏବଲ୍ ଏନର୍ଜିକି ଆମେ ସୃଷ୍ଟି କରିପାରିବା। କିନ୍ତୁ ଏଇ ସବୁ ସହିତ ମୂଳ ପ୍ରଶ୍ନ ହେଉଛି ଯେ ଆମର ଯେଉଁ ଏନର୍ଜି କନଜମ୍ପସନ୍ ତେଲରେ ହେଉ ବା ରିନ୍ୟୁଏବଲ୍ ଏନର୍ଜି ହେଉଛୁ ଆମେ କ'ଣ ଏନର୍ଜି କନଜମ୍ପସନ୍ କରିବା ପାଇଁ ବଞ୍ଚୁଛୁ ସେଇଟାକୁ ଆନନ୍ଦ ଦେଇପାରିବ କି ଅର୍ଥାତ୍ ଆମେ ଏମିତି କରିବା ଯେ କେମିତି ଗୋଟେ ସମ୍ବନ୍ଧ ଭିତରେ ରହିବା ଯେଉଁ ସମ୍ବନ୍ଧ ଭିତରେ ଆମେ ପ୍ରକୃତରେ ବଞ୍ଚିପାରିବା ଅବଶ୍ୟ ତା ଭିତରେ ବି ଏନର୍ଜି ଦରକାର କିନ୍ତୁ ଏନର୍ଜି କନଜମ୍ପସନ୍ ଇଜ୍ ପାର୍ଟ ଅଫ୍ ଏ ଲାଇଫ୍। ଆଉ ସେ ଯେଉଁ ଫିଫ୍ଥ ଏଲିମେଣ୍ଟ କଥା କହୁଛନ୍ତି ସେ କହୁଛନ୍ତି ଅନେକ ସଂସ୍କୃତିରେ ଏୟାର ୱାଟର ଫାୟାର ଆର୍ଥ ଅର୍ଥାତ୍ ମାଟି ପାଣି ଆଉ ଅଗ୍ନି ଆଉ ଜଳ ଏ ବିଷୟରେ କଥା କୁହାଯାଇଛି। ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ଫିଫ୍ଥ ଏଲିମେଣ୍ଟ ହେଉଛି ଏଲିମେଣ୍ଟ ଅଫ୍ ସ୍ପିରିଟ୍ ପ୍ରାଣ। ଅବଶ୍ୟ ଆମ ଭାରତୀୟ ଚିନ୍ତାରେ ଆପଣ ଜାଣିଥିବେ ଯେଉଁ ପଞ୍ଚ ମହାଭୂତ ଯେଉଁଥିରେ ଆକାଶ ମଧ୍ୟ ରହିଛି ତେଣୁ ଫିଫ୍ଥ ଏଲିମେଣ୍ଟଟା ସେଇ ଜିନିଷଟାକୁ ବୁଝାଉଛି। ତାପରେ ଏଇସବୁ ସହିତ ଯେଉଁ ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନର କଥାଟି ଯେ ଆମେ କେମିତି ଶିଖିପାରିବା ଆମର ଯେଉଁ ଏଇ ପୃଥିବୀ କେମିତି ଗୋଟେ ଲର୍ଣ୍ଣିଂ ପ୍ଲାନେଟ୍ ହେଇପାରିବ ଏଇସବୁ କଥା। So, dear Carlos, while translating, I also mentioned that in the Indic thought, we already have a notion of 5 elements, Pancha Mahabhuta. And the fifth element or one of the element is Akasa, ether. And that is also very close to the spirit. In fact, and that Akasa is a very important field, it is kind of the element of elements. So this was my brief translation, and now we are very, we have been enriched and we have half an hour with us to be with Carlos and this beautiful and challenging set of invitations and thinking. So I would invite a few friends to share their thoughts. And Carlos, you can, if it is all right, you can kindly take note of 3-4 comments, and then Also, friends, you can kindly speak in both Odia and English, and I can translate. If you can also speak in Hindi, our dear friend Randhir also translate. So I would call a few friends, and after that, you indicate your interest to speak in the chat box. And I request all friends to take 2 to 3 minutes to begin with. So let me invite Meera, please, Professor Meera Chakrabarti.
Hello, Professor Carlos. Greetings to you. Ananta,
Thank you.
greetings to you. Randhir, greetings to you. I have, as Ananta mentioned, we have 5 elements. The 5th element is space. It's earth, water, fire, air, and space. Now that space, I humbly mention, is totally missing from your presentation, because space is not just a measurement. Space is that which allows dialogue. If I have to see Earth like anybody else, now you are talking of a solution. My humble request is, how is it a solution? Because you are again perhaps going for institutional perceptions from the different sources, which change a little bit of their way of looking at. I would like to look at Earth as a gift. And if it is a gift, then I will have that, it is the responsibility to honor that gift. And if Earth is a gift, then I must take the responsibility of honoring that gift. Now, art doesn't make any judgment. Whatever my points of debate, I mean, it's nice, fun to talk. And I admire Ananta for that. I was talking that it's very nice to have a participatory debate. Having said that, when art doesn't make any judgment, if you remember because you come from that area of Michelangelo painting the Sistine Chapel, Pope wanted his judgment to be imposed on Michelangelo. And he was aghast to see that Michelangelo has painted the nude bodies of the angels. What is this transformation that the art is doing? Through art, he's making a dialogue. He's trying to say that the biblical authoritative way of perceiving is totally defied by him, and he's trying to give a humanistic perception of art. So I would rather say that whether I use fossil oil or I do not use, I use solar oil or not, or whether even when I'm sitting beside the computer, I'm using a lot of energy, and the whole world, because of this pandemic situation, is also taking a lot of energy. Can I be silent? Can I take to my pen and paper and write to you again? You would say, why do you go back to past? If you have to rejuvenate certain things, if you have, all of us have seen on the television how when everything was locked down, the whole nature was bright. The ducks came out, the animals came out, the birds. Did I notice that? Did you note that? Shouldn't we note this garden around us, which we have destroyed, and that is why this is kind of nature says, okay, fine, if you do not want to respect, honor the artistic gifts that we every day get from nature. If I am not responsible towards that, then this is what I suffer. So I have it's the objection is not misunderstood, shouldn't be misunderstood by you. With all humility and due respect to you, I would say that an artistic approach would make me less, using or exploiting earth or than what we are creating another institution another kind of groups of people, another kind of, that doesn't give me any solace. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mira, and I request Carlos to kindly uh, and listen to a few more, and then we will listen to you. So now I request Payal, please. I request Payal to kindly unmute and, if possible, put on your video so that friends can say hello to you. Payal, please.
Professor Carlos, thank you for that wonderful talk. It was very interesting, and I'm deeply indebted to Professor Ananta to give me this opportunity to attend this. I was just, I do not have any question or comment per se, because I was just trying to listen and understand to what he was trying to share. I think for today, I would just express my gratitude to be here and, listen to all the questions and queries, and I'll definitely get back if I have any specific question to ask to Professor Carlos. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
I just wanted to say that Payal is a very creative thinker, and she teaches at IIT in New Delhi, and a very creative thinker and writer. So now I request Madan Bhai, please, Dr. Madan Mohan Pradhan. Madan Bhai. Okay, as Madan Bhai is coming, I request Minati, please. Minati.
Hello. Good evening, everyone. Today also, I don't have any questions because I was so overwhelmed by so many information, philosophy, and things like this. But I would like to specifically mention 2 points. I like the pictorial presentation. It was really thought-provoking. Like, there are few questions. Few things to ponder over, like the possibility of growth, borders, how to measure the relationship. So part of relationship, how it will be. I like that person so much. And one thing that stuck to me is that it is really a conscious understanding can change the pattern. And I don't have any more questions. I have just one request, that crossing the threshold, one part Professor Carlos said, no? There are 2 points where there, explore and learn. I want to know what else we can do to cross the threshold. So that is what I want to, and I want to thank him from the bottom of my heart. It was very nice to listen to him. And at the end, if the time permits, I would like to recite a poem which goes along with this theme. Thank you.
Thank you, Minati. Now I request Sandhya Appa, please. Sandhya Appa. तुम्हें अनम्यूट कर दियो এবং पचार मु ट्रांसलेट कर देबी.
हाँ हेलो समस्त को मोर संध्या समय प्रणाम. आज जहाँ भाई ट्रांसलेट कले मुझे बुझुची आज जो माने गोटे प्रकृत रे आमे जो कौन शिखिबा आउ एमिति भी मोर गोटे पोएट्री माने शिखिबा को हबो सेही कलाटी माने हमको कौन शिखिया पई हबो एमिति गोटे मोर कविता टिए मु लेखिची किछि दिन पूर्वरु ए आज जेमिति कथाटी आलोचना है माने जो विषय आम आलोचना करूछु ए सहित शिखिबा सहित हमर संबंधटा केते गुरुत्वपूर्ण एवं ता सहित हमर चतुर्पार्श्व परिवेश ए समस्त गोटे माने केइकाटू अलग नहती एवं प्रत्येक मुहूर्तटा एबे पृथ्वी जेमिति आम संबंध क्षेत्र रे किबा हमर निजको अन्य मानकू बा पृथ्वी को जेमिति आमे देखुचे ए समस्त गोटे प्रकृतरे गोटे गर्भधारण समय भलिया समयटी आउ खाली आमे मनीष कथा भी भाबिले हुएनी एठी वर्तमान माटी पानी पवन आकाश कहना समस्ते ସମସ୍ତେ ଆମ ପାଇଁ ପ୍ରକୃତରେ ଜୀବନ ଭଳିଆ, ମାନେ ଆମେ ଯେମିତି କଥା କହି ପାରୁଛେ ସେମାନେ କଥା କହି ପାରୁନାହାନ୍ତି, କିନ୍ତୁ ସମସ୍ତଙ୍କର କ୍ଷତି ହଉଛି ଆଉ ସମସ୍ତଙ୍କୁ ନେଇକି ସମସ୍ତେ ଆଗଉଛନ୍ତି। ଯାହାର ବି ଜଣକର, ଯେମିତି ଆମ ପରିବାରର ଜଣକର କିଛି ବି ହେଲେ ଆମ ସମସ୍ତଙ୍କୁ ଆଘାତ ହୁଏ, ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ଆମର ଏଇ ଯୋଉ ମାଟି, ପାଣି, ପବନ, ଆକାଶ ଆଉ ଆମର ସମ୍ବନ୍ଧ, ଏ ସମସ୍ତେ ସମସ୍ତଙ୍କୁ ନେଇକି ଭାରି ମାନେ ସମ୍ବେଦନଶୀଳ ଅବସ୍ଥାରେ ଗୋଟେ ରହିଛନ୍ତି। ଆଉ ସମସ୍ତଙ୍କୁ ଗୋଟେ ଯେମିତି ଗର୍ଭଧାରିଣୀ ମା ଭଳିଆ ଯଦି ଭାବିବା ପାଇଁ ନ ପଡିବ ନିଜ ବିଷୟର ଆଉ ସବୁ ସମାଜ ବିଷୟର କି ସମସ୍ତଙ୍କ ବିଷୟର, ତାହେଲେ ଆମେ ସବୁ କିଛି ହରେଇବା, ଆମ ଆଖି ଆଗରେ ହିଁ ସବୁ ହରେଇବା। ମୁଁ ଏମିତି ଗୋଟେ ମାନେ ଭାବୁଛି, ଏମିତି ହିଁ ମୋର ଗୋଟେ ମାନେ କବିତାଟିଏ ବି ମୁଁ ଲେଖିଛି, ଶିଖିବାକୁ ହବ ସେଇ କଳାଟି। ସେଇଥିରେ ଏଇ କଥାଟା ମୁଁ ଲେଖିଛି, ସେଇ ଆଜିକା ଆଲୋଚନା ସହିତ ଭାରି ରିଲେଟେଡ ଅଛି ସେ କଥାଟି। ମୁଁ ଏତିକି କହୁଛି ଭାଇ।
Dhanyabad, Sandhya Appa. So, dear Carlos and friend, Sandhya Appa, as I mentioned, she works in a kindergarten in a village in Odisha. She was very much, she liked many of your thoughts, and especially about learning. And the whole idea of the 5 elements is that all these elements, we are related to them, and like soil, water, and they have life. And so it is like a pregnant mother, that the pregnant mother is giving birth to a child. So similarly, we also have to hold these elements in us and then able to keep them alive, and that is the learning as a pregnant mother. And I think it's a very beautiful, creative way of envisioning 5th element, that the 5th element of learning is also pregnant learning, and therefore the future is a pregnant future. So this was her thought. And at this juncture, I request friends who would like to speak to indicate in the chat box. And I request Ranveer to please look at the chat box of other friends. And and those who would like to speak, please indicate, and Ranveer would facilitate that. And let me also invite Ranveer and Devendra Bhai to share their thought.
Thank you so much, sir. It was very thought-provoking session. And I have a question in the mind that when we think about learning, after the advent of this enlightenment movement, we have a very narrow conception of learning, a kind of scientific deterministic learning. Means learning is also only the matter of science. But learning is also a matter of art. Learning is also a matter of faith. If science is a matter of truth, then art is the matter of beauty. Then God is the matter of faith. So it means like we have to broaden the perspective of learning for that matter. And since I'm a teacher of sociology, I have some question and concern about the limitation of learning. Of course, we know, education is not just about empowering people, not just about practice of freedom. It's also in some way about, today's education. It's also some ways about killing the imagination, killing the creativity. So my concern is in the context of pedagogies of limitation. Although, all education is an introduction in some way to the future, but we have to underline the destructive pedagogies, putting the Sir Aurobindo's conception of the test of ignorance. We can see we have provided an education model, and we have to provide the critics, the neoliberal fantasy of technocracy that had shaped the curriculum, which is more conducive to the need of capitalist interests than those of our students. totally killing the spirit of the conception of learning as envisioned by John Dewey, who argued that the education was a critical link to expanding and realizing our democratic potential. So without that education and that learning inside, we means how to make our education, for that matter, to valuable resources for giving people a voice, particularly a voiceless voice. How can independent thinking or critical thinking be taught? So particularly in the context of civilizational perspective. So this is my observation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramdeep. And before I request Devendra Bhai, so we have a friend, Kokon Bhai, who has indicated to speak. Kokon Bhai. Hello, Kokon Bhai. Okay, I think Kokon Bhai is not coming. Now Madan Bhai is here. So Madan Bhai, please. And after Madan Bhai, Devendra Bhai, please. हाँ मदन भाई मदन भाई कौन तू
Hello.
हाँ hello yes.
Yeah. Are you hearing or not?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Carlos, for the nice deliberation. And these things, the three points I'm saying, that all human beings here in the earth, they have an aspiration to live in a very wonderful world where there is beauty, where there is light, where there is love and compassion, everything, which we call in other world a heaven. But that is the imagination that they want such a good world, which is like a heaven. The earth has everything potentially, and to be the heaven. Here everything is there. The nature is there. The trees, plants, river, water, everything is there. But sometimes we do not have that potentiality to take the earth in that shape as a heaven, because our mind, the mental arrogance, the ego, everything that it limits our vision, limits our perception about this earth. So sometimes neglect. There is enough food, water, energy, and all basic needs that can sustain more than 10 times of the people which is having the earth now. But sometimes we shout that we have more population, and what we do not know what is the reality inside this earth's abode. And the good people who can do this to avail the equitable distribution to everybody, they do not feel they have the boundary, but they do not have that energy or power to cross the border. But those people who can do, they are the political hegemony, political people, nationalistic people, and they have all the boundaries. They all make all the boundaries, and due to their ego, everything. And in such context, how to appeal a humanistic approach that the new generation should come up and see that the nations, the race do not have boundaries. And there is the God element in the population, which has to be obbuilt. And the earth should be seen as the heavenly abode. The insight, our vision should be expanded, that there is all the potentiality which is we imagine at the heaven, and this can be available to all the people. Perhaps such a network of humanistic approach throughout across the border of the countries can help us to see a new world. And perhaps the COVID pandemic has given such an opportunity for us to see things differently. Thank you.
Thank you, Madan Bhai. And now I request Devendra Bhai, please. And after Devendra Bhai, I request Susri Appa. So Devendra Bhai, please.
Uh, my greetings to one and all present here, and definitely I am grateful to Professor Carlos for such a mesmerizing presentation. And although I don't have any question, but I have to present my opinion in the context of the deliberations made by Carlos, particularly the concept of 5 elements. I would like to quote one Hindi poet. The concept of 5 elements have been beautifully presented by Tulsi Dasa. In one of his couplet, he says, "Panchatantra mili bane sharira, chitijal pavak gagan samira." So definitely this is a universal concept. And now in context of ongoing pandemic, I'm remembering one beautiful line by Matthew Arnold in one of his dramatic monologue, Dower Beach. He concludes it, and these lines are very relevant in present context when entire world is suffering from this silent killer, this invisible enemy of entire humanity. So what is required to be healthy, what is required to be free from any tension? It is, let me quote Matthew Arnold. A, love, let us be true to one another, for the world which seems to lie before us like a land of dreams, so various, so beautiful, so new, hath really neither joy, nor love, nor light, nor certitude, nor peace, nor help for pain, and we are here as on a darkling plain, swept with confused alarms of struggle and flight, where ignorant army clash by night. So definitely this is a kind of alarm, and people are dying, people are confused, people are in tension. And of course, if we are true to one another, if we are true to our studies, to our research, true to our belief for equality, liberty, and fraternity, definitely will be happy at least. So this has been my observation. Thanks for providing me this opportunity, Professor Anantagiri sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Devendra Bhai. Your poetry, so lovely. And now I request another, heart-touching poet, Susri Appa, to join the discussion. Susri Appa, please.
Good evening to everyone. Thank you, Anantabhai. Am I audible?
Yes, please.
Anantabhai, am I audible?
And if possible, you can put your video on, please.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. I'm unable to. Okay. Am I?
Yeah, it is coming. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So at the outset, thank you. Thank you, Professor Carlos, for a very wonderful and incisive session, to say the least. Thank you, Anantavai, for the time that you have allocated to me. Especially, I find, and yes, thank you to Mira, Professor Mira. Very, 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 very insightful question is what I would say. And then, we have actually had a lot of discussion already on the 5 elements. I had few points, but then I'll go to the second one, which is on the learning. Some of the points on the learning, especially the limitations of learning, was very, very insightful and thought-provoking for me. I just have to make one point here, which I was thinking while listening, that yes, limitation of learning is something that, but even before that, we also need to, probably we can, have a longer deliberation on the understanding of learning. What I mean by that is, in many sense, I would think that life is an invitation for learning. And in many sense, perhaps the purpose of life, the purpose of human existence is to learn and to grow, which is also, there in our Hindu philosophy and in many other philosophies across the other point that I would, it is in that spirit that I would, or in that, context, I would also make a point for a further deliberation. It's not a conclusive point, but probably we can discuss and, further on this topic. Into my mind, that learning, begins from a question, from a sense of, the question leads to a sense of search, and the search and the seeking, and that's where the journey starts. In many sense, the poetry begins the same way. So possibly I can read out a couple of lines of one of my few stanzas of just to substantiate what I'm talking about. The title of the poem is, I'll just read out a few lines of it. It's a long one, Odyssey. It searches for itself in acclaims, in slanders, in temples, in mosques and churches, in scriptures, in sculptures, in touch, smell, vision, wonder. It passes through dark tunnels, deep water, jumps into the receiving pit to reach the azure. The search never ends. Sometime it finds the footprint of life. Somewhere it sees the scattered bits of death's anklet, like what we are seeing in today's day. Sometime it finds the footprint of life. Somewhere it sees the scattered bits of death's anklet, but it never stops anywhere, neither at fruition nor at emptiness. Life continues. Perhaps this is what existence is all about, an unending hide and seek between, perhaps this is what existence is all about, an unending hide and seek between a spark of light and giggling darkness. Sitting still under the efflux of words, it keeps sculpting a figurine of the unseen. Who knows when someone would silently descend into them and smile in the mirror where truth sits translucent. The roads may end and journey extends. So, yeah, with these words, I would thank you. With these words, I would thank everybody. I would thank Professor Carlos once again for all his points. And especially thanks to Ananta Bhai for his wonderful translation. Sometimes what we miss, in the first, we get to very, very lucid. And this point, I felt compelled to make it because not Odia everyone understands here, but I was just making a note of some of the points which you lucidly explained to us. So yeah, thankful for that.
Thank you, dear Sushriyapa. So, dear friends, many of you would like to share some thoughts, but I invite you to please share, we'll continue our dialogue going. At this juncture, I would invite Carlos to please share his thoughts. And after Carlos speaks, we'll listen to the poem of Minati and then we'll move ahead. So Carlos, please.
Well, your questions and comments only confirmed what I said at the beginning, that I was sure that I had a lot to learn from all of you, particularly because I see that many of you are artists, have a mastery or passion for arts, and in particular poetry. Which is, I don't think of myself as somebody very good at that, to be honest. I love arts and poetry, but I have more difficulties in expressing myself in ways, I try, but in ways which resonate with in artistic languages. So this is the first comment I want to make, in particular to what Mira, but also others said. Of course, this is about arts. I mean, it's true that in this presentation, it's not so explicit, possibly because of the audiences for which I originally conceived the different elements of the presentation. But let me make more clear something which might have been too implicit in what I said. When I say this is about putting upside down the model of knowledge creation, it implies, among other things, mobilize all kinds of human capacities, and particularly the artistic ones. When I say putting it upside down, is that what I see, at least in the world I know the best, what I see is that knowledge is sliced. The holes, we are in the West, we are very good at slicing holes into pieces, and knowledge into disciplines, into silos, you know. And then when we think about where we are, we look to the institutions supposed to provide guidance and learning and knowledge, and they are all organized into disciplines, and all organized to answer questions which were formulated, many of them several centuries ago, at the onset of the industrial revolution and industrial civilization, and which are not the questions that we have to address now, but especially we cannot address the questions we have now in the same way by looking at first at the disciplines, at the different disciplines, from siloed perspectives. So when I say putting that upside down, it's about what are the questions we face expressed in a way much closer to life as a whole, and to connectedness, and to the fact that life is exactly about the connectedness of everything with everything else. And to the fact that, as I said, our conscious intelligence, particularly what we call rational intelligence, is only a very limited part of our intelligence. Most of our intelligence is unconscious. And I think we humans, we are good at developing languages, but many of those, the artistic languages, and there are many different, are built on the unconscious, on the whole of our bodies and minds, and I don't make difference between bodies and minds. So, of course, it is about mobilizing all those capacities at the same time, and this needs to have, and I congratulate you, the whole group, and in particular Ananta, for this capacity to convene a group where artistic expression is so present. Because in the West, this is not so frequent, you know. People also meet based on their own disciplines, you know, so it's more difficult. I am creating right now an association in Spain where we have people from all disciplines, and particularly from arts, mixed with engineers and social scientists, etc. But this is rare in our country. So I congratulate you for making this possible. So another thing I wanted to mention is that this approach of the fifth element is not a solution. I think I didn't use the word solution, and I rarely use the word solution, because it's definitely not the Club of Rome saying, oh, you know, we have the solution. No. It's about the fifth element. It's not even anything that the Club of Rome has invented, as you expressed so well, several of you. It's there in cultures, in your cultures, but also in many others. So we just took that as a symbol, as a sort of invitation. Again, it's an invitation to people and organizations all around the world to try to establish dialogues and conversations about the challenges we face expressed as challenges of learning. I agree. I hope the COVID is opening an opportunity to think differently. I think the fact that people are confused and many times helpless that's a paradox, but that can open maybe the door to the process of learning, to going to crossing the threshold, because of the confusion, because of the state of despair, helplessness. But the conditions have to be created for people to know that they are allowed to learn by themselves and to act by themselves. And this is, I think, what is missing, because the solutions will not come from the existing institutions. That's my strong feeling. I mean, other members of the Club of Rome can have a different feeling, but my strong feeling is that the solutions, and I don't like the word solution, the path forward will not come from the existing institutions, which have been designed and built with a worldview, which is the worldview of Western modernity, and which are actually limiting, and Randy talked about that, the limitations of learning. The institutions we have are limiting our capacities to learn. So to a large extent, we have to go beyond them, using all human capacities, and particularly the artistic expressions to cross the threshold. And this is a process on which I don't, how to do that. I don't know. I'm just saying, let's try together. I know that learning, I love that learning begins with questions. I cannot agree more with that. Sometimes I say that actually the role of the Club of Rome is to ask better questions. And those better questions can, in a way, create a sort of energy to engage into a process, which, for once, I will use a quote by a Spanish poet, Antonio Machado, who said long ago, he said, "Walker, there is no way. One makes the way by walking." And this is the kind of process in which I think we are. Nobody has the recipes, the solutions, the one-size-fits-all solution for the issues of humanity. The purpose of life is learning, yes, which is the same as saying that the purpose of life is life itself, because life is learning, and let's learn together. And based on the richness, on the huge richness that we often neglect and ignore of the traditions, the cultures, the perspectives of the whole world. So, and I have the feeling that with this conversation, I've learned a lot. I'm a bit closer to make real this idea of mobilizing, the richness of different cultures and learnings. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. And we are slowly in a point of giving a hug to each other and looking forward to meeting next Sunday. In the meantime, very quickly, I saw Mahendra Bhai. Mahendra Bhai, I can request you to share your thought very quickly, and then we'll listen to Minati's point. Mahendra Bhai.
Yeah. Thank you, Anant Bhai. And from the very beginning, I have been listening to this. First of all, I congratulate you for the completion of 1 year of this dialogue, May 20 to May 21. And within this time, we have been able to organize 52 sessions of this dialogue. So this is very experiencing one. Second, thanks to Carlos that he has taken us to the world of thought and questions. And he's one speaker who really put a lot of questions to the listeners. And the questions, one question I really am very impressed that stop cheating our relationship with others' life and time. And there is no such questions. Actually, after noting down all the presentations that I have, whatever I have been able to do, I think that I have to take about another 1 or 2 months to put questions to Carlos. And most of the things that Carlos was telling us, I was realizing that how we were exploring ourselves from his presentations and how we were implementing all those things in our lifetime. So these are the truth of our experience. Many things he has told about education, the crisis, the emergency, and the question of power. Many cross-cutting things have really come here, and it is not an easy thing to digest. But although Carlos said that it is not a recipe, yes, it is a recipe. And this recipe is very hard to digest, actually. So I congratulate Anant Bhai, the Indian philosopher, and Carlos, the Italian philosopher, who we always remember this. Rome was not built in a day. In our school time, our teachers were using to tell us. And we also think that in order to put a question to Carlos, it will take some time. But one important thing is that one question came to my mind that we people who are like-minded people, the co-worker of our thoughts and knowledge, how can we change this brutality of this human society? And there is the bipolarity of aesthetics and ethics. On the other hand, there is the economics of greed. So how to transform all those people, those who are in greed and who are in devastation? Can our dialogue change them? This was my thought that came to my mind. So this is not a question at all. This is not a question because of this question. I mean, a lot of questions would come in our mind if at all we listen to learned people like Carlos and Anant Bhai. So many congratulations to this program. And I hope that in future, we will continue with our silent question and silent answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mahendra Bhai. Dear friends, slowly with the kiss of time. But let's see if it is all right. Very quickly, Dr. Patel, and I apologize for the brevity of time. Dr. Patel, I request you to share your thought in 1 minute.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening to everyone. I very liked in this event. Now the second times I have participating in this event, and now the pandemic times of COVID-19 now emerging and crisis and power main powers now not available in the higher education in India. It must now the learning and teaching process affordable to the students by the universities and higher educational institutes in India. I am very glad to you and thankful to all eminence and organizing teams and all our valuable speakers. Heartily congratulates to all eminence, all our valuable speakers and all organizing teams. Thank you so much giving me opportunities, presentations, my thoughts in this event. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Patel. And other friends, we would have your thoughts in our next session. And let us conclude with Minati, please. Minati, your point.
Yeah. As Professor Carlos said, that let's learn together. So in my thought, let's make it a circle. So I'm reading one poem from my book, A New Dawn. The poem is titled Circle. We We are a full circle. We are a full circle. Without you, I am not a half circle, not even a dot. Question of my existence is not at stake, but I am so on.
It seems we cannot hear you, Minati.
Beings going together. Sometimes being a dot to join the bigger circle, being part of yin and yang in the universe gives birth to a new morning and a new lease of life. Thank you.
So thank you, Minati. And so Ranveer and Devendra Bhai and friends, we can.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Definitely we had a very great conversation. So many insightful thoughts to understand. So now I would like to invite Professor Devendra to give a vote of thanks.
Thank you very much, Ranveer sir, for giving me this opportunity. And really, my words cannot express to the extent this great dialogue has contributed, and everybody, particularly Professor Carlos, Professor Anand sir, you yourself, and all the participants for their active participation and motivation. Definitely, but as the tradition, I have to convey my vote of thanks. So here it is. Good evening, everybody. I'm Dr. Devendra K. Tiwari, Assistant Professor of English at Raffles University in Neemrana. It's my honor and privilege to extend a vote of thanks on this August moment. I would like to thank Mr. Randhir Gautam, Head School of Humanities and Social Sciences, Raffles University, the convener of dialogue, and Professor Anant Kumar Giri sir, the moderator of today's dialogue, for giving me this opportunity to extend this vote of thanks. On behalf of School of Humanities and Social Sciences, Raffles University, Neemrana, Rajasthan, India, Raise Global Foundation, USA, and Vishwaneedam Center for Asian Blossoming, I remain deep in debt to Carlos Alvarez Pereira for his wonderful talk and dialogue on the Club of Rome and calling of planetary co-learning, the emerging new civilizations perspectives. I'm grateful to the chief patron of Raffles University, revered Dr. Justice Meena V. Gombar, for being the source of inspiration and motivation for organizing such kind of activities. I take this opportunity to extend a vote of thanks to Deepika Dave, the CEO of Raise Global Foundation USA, for being the source of inspiration and encouragement. I must extend my vote of thanks to Professor Anant Giri, honorary trustee of Vishwaneedam Center for Asian Blossoming, Puducherry and Chennai. I would like to express my sincere thanks to Professor Diwakar Goli, Honorable Vice Chancellor of Raffles University. I offer my sincere thanks to active participants, guests, audience, and everybody who contributed in making this program materialize. Particularly, I'm grateful to our active participants for raising such enlightening questions, for your beautiful comments and compliments. Really, it has added fuel to the fire of intellectual discussion, I must say, for initiation. And finally, thanks a lot once again to everybody, and I wish you all a